Okay, thank you for joining me and the writers of Kern in welcoming Henry Barajas. Henry Barajas is a Latinx author from Tucson, Arizona. He is best known for his graphic memoir, which we are discussing today. He's the author of Helm Gray Castle. He has contributed to anthologies that benefit mass shooting, Route 91 victims, and the Southern Poverty Law Center, such as Where We Live and The Good Fight. Currently, Barajas is the sales manager at Ani Press in Los Angeles. Our discussion centers around the graphic memoir La Voz de M.A.Y.O, Tata Rambo, which is based on the oral history of Ramon Huarigue, an orphan and World War II veteran who co-founded the Mexican-American Yaqui and others M.A.Y.O organization, which has successfully lobbied the Tucson City Council to improve living and working conditions for members of the Pascua Yaqui tribe, paving the way to their federal recognition. Meanwhile, Ramon's home life suffered as his focus was pulled from his family to the wider community and from domesticity to the adrenaline of the campaign. A resonant, neglected slice of American history is brought to life for the first time with art by Jay Gonzo, letter art by Bernardo Bryce, editing by Claire Napier, and a script by Henry Barajas, the great-grandson of Ramon Huarigue, AKA Tata Rambo. Okay, so we're gonna dive into this now. Henry, did you have an initial opening statement you want to make, or do you want me just to dive into the
yeah, I was going to talk about, I guess, writing, right? Because everyone here is a writer. It's nice to be in a room full of writers. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super honored. I'm going to share my screen. So I did this presentation at the Kern County Library. There was a comic book festival. That's where I met Cynthia. So I'm very honored that this is how this all came to be. So I'm going to do a quick rundown on what I do as far as writing in general. Let's see here. There we go. That's La Voz de M.A.Y.O, Tata Rambo, my great grandfather. The overview. So when I start writing, I basically just download everything that I want, especially just the initial feeling. I'm one of those rare writers that loves the first draft. For some reason, whenever I put down my first draft, I'm always chasing that high. I'm always trying to get back to that initial feeling of how I felt about the story, or I want to go with the story. But if anyone here is an Aaron Sorkin fan, the art is in rewriting. That is where you actually kind of, I don't know, make it look like you knew what you were doing the whole time. So my process and my advice to everyone here is just don't write the book, but write everything that's going to be in the book. And it's going to be the overview, in my opinion, is the best place to put down all your ideas, because I'm very forgetful. I don't always remember everything, especially some of the like more high concept ideas that I have for a story. So if I put it down as I'm like thinking about it, or I'm just, a lot of it is discipline. So as you have that discipline of sitting down and just, I hate to use this word, but puking everything out of your brain that you want in the story into a single document, so you can go back and as you're writing, the script, or writing the manuscript, or your book, or, whatever you're doing, this is always going to be a good place to come back to and mine from. Because sometimes you're like, oh, this character I don't remember about what, this each, character was doing. I don't know if anyone here is interested in writing comic book scripts. I'd be more than happy to send you, or send Cynthia to pass around my comic book script. But a comic book script is much like a film and television script, except you have a lot more freedom. It's less, there's less of a template, or some, like there's the film and TV scripts are more, I don't know, uniformed. Like comic book scripts are very free form. You're doing a lot of directing. There's a lot of things that I could go into about comic book scripts that I'm sure none of you A, care about, or B, ever intend on writing a comic. But when you do look at a comic book like La Voz de M.A.Y.O, hopefully you can go to your, I know Kern County Library has it. Um, you will see that each I think there's a, yeah, here we go. You will see on each panel there is a single action happening, which is, I think, pretty key on even like when you're writing prose. Like there's, every sentence, I think your character can do only one thing, much like how in a comic book your artist can only draw one action. So what I like to, the reason why I wanted to show this is basically just to talk about the rewriting process. Once you get the art from your artist, they're putting their own flavor into the story in a way that you will never ever, unless you're a cartoonist yourself, will never think of. The way Gonzo laid out the middle photo where the kids are playing and the newspaper girl is like in the motion of throwing the newspaper, and then you see in that second panel he catches it. You couldn't have done that in one panel. So when you're writing these scripts and when you're writing these comics, sometimes what your dialogue might be, you know, it might not fit in the panel, or it might not jive with what's happening in the art. So the art of rewriting is in the layouts. So as you see on the left, comic books, I see comic books as double page spreads, but also as panels. So every time you open La Voz de M.A.Y.O, it's a complete view from the corner left panel to the bottom right panel on the other page. So your eye is guided left to right per page, but the complete experience is completely open. As you can see, page 31, there's only one page, and then page 32 and 33, it's a full window basically into the world that I'm trying to bring you in. Like I said, there's just a lot of tricks you could do with the visual narrative that you can't do with prose. I think I like to incorporate music a lot into these comics. And so yeah, so I mean, the basic thing I'm trying to get out here is, even when you're writing, when you get to this second stage of this creating a comic or even writing, you're also going to be kind of going back and seeing what you laid out and trying to retool and tinker with it until you can get it right. So as you can see in this panel, we Gonzo started coloring the art. The note for La Voz de M.A.Y.O was that to always have a Tucson sunset. I think that's something that you could do with the visual narrative that I really appreciate. Of course, in prose, you could do, illustrate that in so many different ways. But the theme also within the comic is the color palette is very limited to like the red and the greens, the yellows, and also that sunset color that you see on the top left of the screen. This is my favorite sequence in La Voz de M.A.Y.O chapter 1, where we see kind of the crossing the Rubicon moment, where the city of Tucson wants to displace the Pascoyaki tribe, take thousands of people's homes, bulldoze them, and build the I-10 through their community. And this was the moment where the community stood up and protested to stop that from happening. And one of the cool things you could do in comics, in the middle of the page, I want to illustrate a riot. There is, I think, something beautiful about the 9-panel grid. So you see the cop, you see the protester, you see the dogs, you see the anger, you see the pushback, you see everybody's just tense and ready for some sort of combat, and it's completely has no dialogue, has no words. I wanted it to look like basically a propaganda poster while illustrating the per panel beats, and then you flip to the next page, and you get a whole double page spread that's on the far right of the force and the protest, and just basically the divide of like what I think is going to be evergreen. Like this book can be picked up years from now and will always be protesting Native American rights and Mexican American migrants being detained and separated from their families. And that's one of the big themes of the book, is keeping families together. That is some really just dumb stuff that you don't need to know about unless you want to make comics. I'm happy to send you this presentation. Pitch documents, I think, like, you know, I don't know if anyone here is trying to break in, but yeah, but when you're trying to pitch your book, I think, you know, unless you got an agent or there's other things that you want to you know, consider, but I'm in the mindset of always just doing the art, just writing and publishing and putting it out there. But this could be really good for yourself as far as like trying to drill down what you're trying to say, as you know, and pitch, because once this book's done, if no one's going to buy it or read it, like, because, you know, maybe you're not the greatest salesman or person, or trying to like find ways to get this story out there, I think it's important to kind of be able to drill down what this book is about and how you can sell it to not just your community, your bookstore, your library, friends or family, or complete strangers. So, you know, just I was a journalist, so I'm always in the mindset of you know, who, what, when, why, where, and how. And that's how I also attack my characters in each book, basically just trying to flesh out who they are, what they're doing, why are they doing it, what is their ultimate goal, and how do we get there, is you know, always a lot of fun for me. But also creating some sort of document that kind of illustrates who exactly this person is, you know, what's their favorite cereal, what's their morning routine, are they a Virgo, using those characteristics and traits to really distinct them and give them their own shadow. Let's see what else I got. So if you're looking into comic books or getting into comics, I've been more than happy to help point you in the right direction. I've been in the comic book industry for the last 13 years. I know a lot of people. So a lot of these publishers will probably not accept a slice of life, you know, biographical memoir comic, but I do know more that might be able to help. So I think a lot of the questions that Cynthia sent me really drill down on what this memoir is going to be about. So I think that I'll use that opportunity to talk more about La Voz de M.A.Y.O.
Okay. I did want to ask something though, really quick about the pitching.
Sure.
Was this book complete when you sent it off to be published, or did you
No,
pitch it first?
I tried to pitch it to comic book publishers, but this was 6-7 years ago, and I didn't have much other than the story I wanted to do. So it was really hard for them to take a chance. But then I realized that this is my story and I wanted full, complete control of it. So I wanted to publish some type of version of it before a publisher um, got, you know, I didn't really want anyone to tell me how to tell my family's story. And I wanted to have full agency to say whatever I wanted to say, and take the kind of time that I wanted, because La Voz de M.A.Y.O took 4 years of research and 1.5 years of production.
Hmm.
So if you are looking into doing these memoir books, you're not going to do an easy turnaround on these things. As a journalist, one of the sayings, or something that used to be tossed around a lot, is if your mother says she loves you, get a second source. So you just, you know, your as much as we all love our family, a lot of them are liars, and a lot of them remember history in their own way. So it's important to try to verify as many facts as you can, and you know, use the right type of verbiage that won't get you in trouble.
Right. I think that is actually one of my questions. I think I'm going to ask these a little bit out of order that I sent them to you.
Okay.
So that on page 60, so there's this visual representation of your great grandfather as he gets younger, recalling his
Mhm.
childhood memories. Um, so I wanted to know a little bit more about that time that you spent with him, gathering that information, which you said took about 4 years. So did you also interview other family members in the same manner?
Yes, I interviewed his children. I interviewed his peers living that were still around during the the early 1960, well, late 60s, early 70s. um I went to the library and used their archives. I went to the universities to a lot of the older Tucson historical books are like only available to check out and sit there and read. So I spent a lot of time in these like quiet University of Arizona library rooms, just like handling these these first edition books that aren't in print anymore or not available digitally. Um, I love that scene that you're referencing about my great grandfather, because in that in that time, I was sitting with him, taking him out to dinner. We went out to our last march. I just posted the first chapter of Voz de M.A.Y.O in the chat, so you're welcome to read it. I take him to the Cesar Chavez Day um, march to sell to. It was also in solidarity of Rosa, who seeked asylum in the Southside Presbyterian Church for 400 plus days to avoid deportation and to separate her from her family. And that was something that La Voz de M.A.Y.O was very keen on. And it was just nice to see him at his last, at his last march. And, marching with him there and reading his work and reading what he had written down. And then also kind of trying to understand who he was as a complete person, but also knowing that his mother died from a stroke, his father died from complications due to mustard gas from World War I. So I wanted to get an idea of like what a kid would go through something like that and how that would impact him. So there was a scene where the last time I got to sit down and talk to him was in his yard on the bed of his truck, and I felt like I was saying goodbye to like not just the great grandfather that I've known and grown up with, but someone who has like been in my head and in my heart and for 4 years. And it was just like talking to three different guys and trying to get those voices down.
So on page 61 through 63, there's this where you have a lot of your own internal questioning about your great grandfather. So it got me also thinking about his PTSD, which to me I think he probably had PTSD, his political activism, his time during the war, his home life. Can you expand on what it was like hearing that information? And did you have to fill any gaps in the narrative?
Yeah, so he never talked about his time in World War II. And I found out so many things. Like, I didn't know he was married before he had married my great grandmother. He married a woman in Panama, and they both came back to the United States. And then she ended up divorcing him while he had to go back to Okinawa. Comes back, meets my great grandmother. Um, I knew that he was an alcoholic and a chain smoker, which he died from emphysema. Um, and there's a scene in chapter 1 where he's cooking breakfast for his kids, and he's pouring something in his coffee, and that's the only time I hint on something like that, where I wanted to illustrate that, yeah, like this is one of the ways he dealt with his PTSD, which in the beginning of the book, he has a nightmare of being there, being in war, and is comforted by his wife, and which I wanted to show that there was some love before he ends up cheating on her. And that was something I really wanted to address, was something that we never talked about as a family, is why my great grandmother and my great grandfather never lived together, and it was because he was very promiscuous. And I think that's what happens when you're a political leader and someone who everyone adores and wants to be around and respect. He probably didn't have that. He didn't probably get the kind of love and education and that someone his age growing up without a mother might have gotten. So I was thinking, also I was writing this during the height of the Me Too era, and I wanted to address these types of things because when I found out about Martin Luther King cheating on his wife, or Gandhi sleeping with his underage cousin, it really kind of always took the shine from people that I admired, and I wanted to give that, I wanted to have that, look at something like this with a more current lens. But yeah, learning about how he was a janitor, how he worked at the school that his kids worked, went to school at, that he was in High Chaparral. He got a lot of the Native American community hired as background actors. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with old Tucson studios, but that's where like John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, Sally Fields, like a lot of people filmed movies there. And my great grandfather was one of the people that championed getting Native American roles in these movies. So that was fun to learn. And also learning that he was a writer. I didn't know that he was a published writer who created Voz de M.A.Y.O, Tata Rambo, which all of the newsletters are printed in the graphic novel and haven't seen the light of day since over almost like 50 years. So there was a lot of revelations that were positive and negative, but as a writer, maybe it's probably really this, not tasteful to say this, but learning the bad things was great because you could really flesh out a character, and you can really kind of play with those elements and not just tell this glowing story about someone.
Well, I think it also humanizes. It
Oh, definitely.
humanizes him. And, I think, I actually think it's a disservice to make um, anyone larger than life, and give them this sort of almost Christ-like imagery. I mean, Martin Luther King was a human being, so, and same with, other leaders with the same sort of what you mentioned, like some of the stuff that may not be that great to know about them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, definitely.
yeah. So I read the epilogue too, and in there you talk about your great grandmother. I love your description of her. She's, the way she leaps off the page with her drinking Zima and listening to Bob Marley, just really sassy in her garden. I love that. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about her influence in the narrative of the story and how you approach the narrative of
Yeah,
the
my
story.
great grandmother was such a beautiful, amazing woman, someone I loved and adored, and who was always there for me like a second mother. I wish would have started writing this comic when she was alive, because she would have been able to set the record straight. She was a very honest person. It's funny, the only record of her in the newspapers was when she had co-founded a candle making factory for the church to also inspire the community to come in and get job experience, and they can take that elsewhere. That was like a startup kind of thing. And there's a picture of her making candles, and it was just like one of those like lost in history kind of figures. They don't even put her first name, they call her Mrs. Jauriga. So I wanted to um she was kind of the, she was the character that really grounded everything, where while Ramon was trying to save the community, was trying to keep all the Pasco Yaqui people in this, on their land, he neglected the family, and she was the one that kept the family together.
Mm.
And to me, a lot of people can misconstrue that as her being like this stick in the mud, or someone who was just like she was like this angry person, but she really was like, she was always, pretty bitter about what happened to her. And she, something I didn't put in the book, but she ended up she used to work for the printing press at the University of Arizona and quit a couple of years before she could have earned her retirement, just to take care of the family, some of her grandkids. So she always went out of her way to help her family, and I wanted to kind of illustrate that in the book, but also use that epilogue as a way to like kind of honor her in a way that I wish you could have read.
Yeah. So my next question kind of goes back to what you've already touched on. You know, we everything we in life we view through our own perception filters. So in your graphic memoir, you touch a little on your personal history with the LGBTQIA plus community and coming out to your time as a stand-up, which I thought was really surprising. I was like, oh, really? You were a stand-up? And as a reporter for the Arizona Daily Star, can you talk about how your life um, influenced your interpretation of your grandfathers more than what you've already touched on so far?
Yeah, so I think one of the things about the book is kind of using me as a way for the audience to kind of connect to the story, as I didn't know a lot about what happened, and a lot of two people in Tucson do not know the history of the infrastructure of the city. The fact that people drive from one end of the I-10 interstate from California to Florida, and how this group and my great grandfather was able um to divert that, and only just to save people. The interstate was going to run along a community, but instead it went south and displaced like a the dump, like the city dump. Basically they had to move that instead, and for some reason the city of Tucson couldn't have made two and two together to move trash. They would have rather moved people. But one of the I think reasons why they tried to do that was because there was Oracle Road in Tucson, which you can take all the way to Phoenix. Maybe that was just a connection, but interviewing someone like Congressman Raul Grijalva, who ended up taking over for Congressman Mo Udall's work as the this is Secretary of let's see, I can find the word, I can find the official title later, but kind of continuing his work of helping Native Americans and protecting the environment. But yeah, just putting myself in was, I don't know, like I'm a big fan of Harvey P. Carr. Big Mouse was a big influence on me, and some of the autobiographical stuff. So that was kind of me trying to give back to those kinds of comics of like, this is like trying to put a timestamp on myself personally, since this was a story about me discovering this history and trying to reconcile with who he was as a person, and why the Native American tribe refused to recognize my great grandfather and his work and the work of M.A.Y.O, and kind of the city of Tucson and the history books not doing their due diligence, and basically not trying to change history but amend history.
Mhm.
See, there's a question here.
I yeah, I saw that. Oh, did you want to wait until after my questions, or
Sure,
do you
yeah,
want
we
to
could
go
do
ahead
that.
and start? Yeah,
Yeah,
so
let's do
Carla,
this.
I see your question. I'm going to ask them in a minute. So just give me a second. We're almost there. And please, the rest of you, if anyone else has any questions, please put it in the comments and we'll get to them. Um, let's see. Okay. Um, so giving a voice to your great grandfather in the M.A.Y.O organization is a form of activism. This that is in the way it raises awareness and teaches history that would otherwise be lost. And you mentioned at the end of the book that you would like to continue by writing more graphic novels about Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. Are these in the works?
Um, at the moment, no. I'm just completing my fantasy story, Helm Greycastle. I just signed up with a management company that I'm trying to figure out what my next move is. It might be a superhero comic, it might be a true crime comic that I really want to do. Um, Creatively, for some reason, I am not seeking another biography about a Latinx hero, which I would love to do. I just need to find I mean, a lot of this, as everyone here knows, a lot of this comes down to money. You know, how can I monetize my time better? And La Voz de M.A.Y.O, while it was a passion project, it was a $30,000 project that I could have, bought a home, Could have had a really cool vacation somewhere, bought a new car, but I'm looking to do these things a little bit more fiscally responsibly. And as much as La Voz de M.A.Y.O was something that I will always hang my hat on, I've written my obituary pretty early in my life, the first line of my obituary very early. I want to do something that is more lucrative, because there's as much as these projects are, adored, they're not very profitable.
Mhm. I understand that. And then I think this is going to be my last question before we open it up to everyone. Can you please discuss your views on using comic books, graphic novels as a teaching tool, from literature adaptations, and then of course to memoir and history and biographies? And how do you think graphic novels create accessibility for those who might have difficulty with traditional forms?
Um, yeah, I think well, the cool thing about hold on, can you repeat that question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Um, Discuss your views as using graphic novels as a teaching tool from literature adaptations to memoir to history and biographies. And then the second part of that question is, how do you think graphic novels create accessibility for those who might have difficulty with traditional forms?
Got it. A lot of people in my family are dyslexic. I think, undiagnosed, but comic books fills in a lot of the parts that I think I tend to glaze over while I'm reading something. The visual narrative, I think, is for me a more interesting type of media. I think with the accessibility in comics it is comic books is a sequential art form that is our, as a human species, how we first started communicating. I think it's, such an important, vital way of getting information out there. So I'm just honored to have a more I'd like to say a savant way of looking at the way comics are being made and told, and trying to continue that tradition. I think Art Spiegelman's Mouse and Persepolis and March by Congressman John Lewis are true and tried testaments to how important these stories are in the classroom and in our libraries and educational spaces. And I think it is just as important as prose and literature. Um, I also think it's a little bit cheaper than making a film or television show about something, and also the price points are better, and I think that um, it's also a really great way to collaborate with storytellers in ways that I think um, that really enrich the creative process and the creative mind. And comic books, I think, are superior, but I love reading and writing everything. As a journalist and someone who's been telling stories in radio and in comedy and in so many different ways, I'm very lucky to have found platforms and ways to kind of monetize that. So um, I think making a graphic memoir is an amazing opportunity, but also there is nothing wrong with just, typing away and going to Amazon Kindle and uploading your stories that way, or using Kickstarter to fund a published book, or finding a way to get an agent and create a bidding war for your stories.
Yeah, I think it was such a unique way to present a memoir. I liked it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and someone, Anka had mentioned to me that now graphic poetry is becoming a thing. And I do think it's a very valuable um, form of storytelling, just like you said, just because of the way, um, as a reader, any type of reader, or the way you can process information that's given to you. And sometimes density doesn't serve everyone, right? And so in the way that people, my aim, because I am and I'm very passionate about education, is to reach as many people as possible and to make, you know, make a lot of things accessible, including literature and history and memoir and biographies. I'd love to see a graphic math book, so, like I'd like to see it kind of expand to encompass a lot of subjects, to help those students who can't read, or not necessarily can't read, but have difficulty processing information with, a density of words. Okay, so with that, we're opening it up for questions from the audience. There's already one in here from, I'll start from the top, Carla, although I think Carla might have stepped out already. She asked, could you give a short, I did already give a short synopsis, but I'll let Henry give his synopsis of his graphic novel. She asked, what is the story arc? And then what did your great-grandfather do?
My elevator pitch is my Voz de M.A.Y.O, Tata Rambo, is about my great-grandfather who helped one of the last Native American tribes gain federal recognition, kept thousands of people from being displaced and losing their homes, and protested the city of Tucson of building the Interstate 10 through the Pasco Yaquis land. What is the story arc? I think I don't know. That's an interesting question. I don't know if she meant it the way I think she's asking. But there are multiple story arcs. There is the story arc of me as a writer who is trying to figure out what is happening. My great-grandfather, as a family man who has met, who has started this organization, who's trying to improve his community, but is met with the resistance of the city of Tucson trying to kind of just discredit and ruin everything that they've been working for by all the sidewalks and electricity and just like improvement of just life in general for the community, and stopping that, but also then losing his family in the process. I think, like, I guess there's the hero's journey where you start in one end and you're completely different, and everything's changed, but how do you respond to all that? And I think that was the goal of trying to tell that story. And then what did he do? He was a construction worker, a janitor. He was a political activist, a journalist, an author, and he cheated on my great-grandmother, and that's all in the book, and all my dirty family's history is there if you want to read very personal details. Please check it out at the library or buy it.
Sandy Moffat asked, as with other genres, do publishers prefer to use their own artist, or are there more open to using the author's artist?
A publisher will typically try to use their own artist, mainly because they know that there is some sales data that points that this artist will generate some money or is a known quantity in the industry or in the market. If you are bringing in your own artist, hopefully they do have clout or have a following that garners some sort of attention, but a lot of the times it is the publisher that tries to match you and tries to, it worked to my benefit. I had someone that I wanted to work with, but he was not a known quantity. But my publisher and boss said, you should work with Jay Gonzo, and he was perfect. He lived in Arizona. He was Mexican and American, just like me. And sometimes the corporate suits know what they're talking about, which is very, very rare.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
Yeah, I guess we can open up the, they don't have to be muted if they want to.
Yeah, go ahead. You can unmute yourself if you want to just ask questions. There's Stephanie.
Or you don't have to.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm getting paid either way. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. I would totally donate. No. I'm very honored to talk to writers. We all kind of have the same brain in a sense. So
Yeah, I think so. I think that that's what no matter the format, right? We sort of approach it all, even if we have different approaches, it's the same sort of, you know, same sort of thing that we're all
right.
creating and writing and pulling from the same source, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Um, let me see.
Jeanette asked, what sort of question should we ask? I think, or we'll start with, I think you should start with why. Why are we telling this story? Kind of finding, for me, yes, telling a story about my great grandfather and the work he did, but having some sort of like important moment in that story to build towards was important. Like the moment where, at spoiler alert, at the end they all protest at the Pioneer Hotel and stop basically this big show of force, this loud resounding voice of the community saying, no, you cannot come into our town, you cannot, displace our community. That was like, for me, like, how do I get to that point? How do I make this interesting? How do I make this fun? That was the kind of questions that I was asking. How do I make this engaging? How do I retain your attention without having you to ask more questions about why are, there is a lot of conceit in this book because it's about a town you've probably never heard of, about a man you've never heard of either. So trying to make that engaging and noteworthy is the kind of questions I was able to, that I was asking myself to try to make this worth your time. Start with the question, why is this worth anybody's time? Why are we writing a story about Mima and Peepaw? Like, let's yeah, those are my like, big pieces of advice. Someone's unable to get out of single view, and I think if you go to the top right, it says view. You can go to speaker, gallery. It's next to participants. There's a caret there on the right of it. That's my advice as a writer. You can use speaker or gallery view.
Okay.
Henry, your when I think of memoir, I think of a certain size, and when I think of comic book, I think of a certain size, and yours is kind of somewhere mushed in between. I mean, it's got the graphics of a comic, but it's more traditional book sized based on what I've seen. Are there parameters for the size that comic book type of work should be? And did you have an issue with someone being willing to accept a longer piece of work in that format?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I was paying out of pocket for this, so if I had more money, I would have put in more pages. So I like to think of comics as in panels. So if you see here, these are panels. So I'm thinking more in panels and less in pages, because that's how I'm telling the story. So if I can maximize my panel count per page because I couldn't afford to pay more pages, then I'm telling more story. As someone who loves books, I wanted to have that kind of that important back matter that kind of spells out a lot of the research. And I'm one of those people that loves to read back matter and research in books. So I wanted to give that person that experience. But yeah, like with comics, there's really no like with novels, there's like 30,000, 40,000 words, 100,000 words. There's those kind of parameters. But with comics, you can't really count words on panels. You know what I mean? You can't really count words on the pages. So for me, it's you're counting panels. I hope that answers your question.
There's another question from Anka. She says, did you get all your family to give you permission to use their piece of the story?
No, I didn't need their permission. I wrote this for myself. I also wrote this for my great grandfather. I didn't like secretly tape anybody, or like I didn't like go out of my way to like, it wasn't like a gotcha story. It was more of a, this is what happened story. And if you're not going to keep that information from me, I'm going to find out one way or another. Because A, I'm that good, and B, I need that. I need it. I need to tell the story. So yeah, there was some pushback from some members of the family, but overall, it was important to everyone that Ramon was recognized. They all got on board when they saw it in the paper. They were like, oh, they all were proud of it all of a sudden. So if you can get your book in the paper, yeah, people will think you're cool.
Yeah, I think that would be a tricky thing, huh? When you're writing memoir, just getting
Oh
all your
yeah.
family members on board. But it is a nice tribute to your great grandfather, though.
Yeah, it was
Even
cathartic. It was
yeah,
everybody has been angry that he didn't get the type of recognition, and I wanted to do the work to do it.
mm,
It must have been worth it to you to out of pocket that kind of money. So kudos for doing that.
Yeah, all through Kickstarter. And I think Kickstarter is a great way to fund your projects. Starting a newsletter is, I think, a really good idea. There's MailChimp, Substack. There's so many different ways to do it, but collecting emails, keeping in contact with people, always kind of not only just promoting yourself, but giving information out, sharing information. I published a Linktree link that is where you can pre-order my upcoming graphic novel, Helm Greycastle. But on the top of that, there are causes that are important to me, like supporting LGBT IA plus Black communities, helping migrants and the people, the asylum seekers, and helping stop Asian American violence that I think we're all very passionate about at the beginning of the year, but that passion starts to dwindle as time goes on, and fatigue of just, so I wanted to keep that on top of mind, that if you are listening to what I have to say or reading my work, I hope you can also support the causes that are important to me.
how did you generate interest in your Kickstarter? Did you have an existing sort of fan base, or did you have to grow it organically?
I grew it organically. I mean, I used to work at Citibank for 4 years as a loan modification underwriter during the 2008 financial, the housing crisis. So I met a lot of friends that way, and I was writing the employee newsletter for just like, trying to honor and praise the people around me. And I was always writing. I started writing for free about comics. I started generating for comicsbeat.com, a news article or a news site for the comic book industry, and then using that as a platform to get a job as a reporter at the Arizona Daily Star, having no pedigree or journalism degree, and then using that as a way to, like, people recognize my byline there, and then writing for another paper and doing stand-up comedy and being on the radio. And so I've always been building my brand unknowingly, but also just doing things that I love. And then I tried to operate this as a business, starting a newsletter, being engaging on social media, going to bookstores, going to comic book stores, creating relationships with retailers, so that when it came time to sell my book, they were glad to put it up there, and they hand sold it. And I think a lot of us are based here in California. California has a lot of bookstores and comic shops that are happy to help you. The title Helm Greycastle. So while I was researching La Voz de M.A.Y.O, I found out that I had no idea that my history as a Mexican American stems from the invasion of Spain, and how Mexico was conquered and killed and replaced, and learning that the Pascoyaki tribe was documented by Spanish conquistadors and priests, knowing, being like wow, the people that I like am a part of go back that far. So learning about Mesoamerican history, learning that there was kings and queens and jaguar knights and wizards and elemental gods, it just, I think, really lend well to as a fantasy. And no offense to anybody here, but you know, I love Lord of the Rings, I love fantasy, but it's majority white. Never seen a Mexican with Aragon, you know, or Gimli, or, you know, so it was like I wanted to bring the flavor of brown people and history into a genre that I think it would lend well to. So Helm Greycastle is about a guy who doesn't know he's Azteca, and finds himself in an adventure to save the last dragon prince. And there is a political kind of tension that there is Montezuma, who stopped the Spanish invasion, who sees himself as a god and discredits the gods, and then there's the people that worship gods and feel that the gods saved them. So there's a whole kind of like a war within Azteca in a post Spanish invasion, which I had a lot of fun writing. That was opposite of La Voz de M.A.Y.O, that I didn't have to like ask for anybody's permission, or I didn't have to like, like ask any family members if this was okay. It was just like I'm making this up on the fly and having a lot of fun with it. Another $20,000 investment. I think, yeah, if you're ready to spend a lot of money, make a comic. That's my goal. That's my advice.
I wish I could.
Yeah.
I'm not very savvy with the whole building an audience sort of thing. So I don't know if Kickstarter
It starts here. Publish. Just publish and publish and write and just collect emails.
Bill is asking, what are your plans for future books besides the ones you've mentioned? I'm assuming.
My plans for future books, like I want to do a true crime story that's based in Tucson. There's a serial killer and not a lot of people know about, which I'm banking on. I want to do a YA story or new adult story about people working at a movie theater. I want to do a superhero comic. I love superheroes. Between all of us, I got to write a Batman story. Hopefully it comes out soon. That's kind of like a huge notch in my belt, something I've always wanted to do. So I recently wrote a story for Marvel Comics that hopefully this doesn't piss anybody off, but encouraging the Latinx community in New York to get the vaccine, especially kids that before they started school. I did a Marvel comic that like the mayor was promoting. And I know a lot of people don't like the mayor there, but I think he's doing a great job.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
Someone was in an episode of Superman, like the George Reeves Superman. Oh, cool. I got to meet the woman that played Lois Lane. She retired in Tucson, Arizona.
Yeah, very cool. Are you still doing stand-up? I'm curious.
Yeah, this whole hour.
Oh, okay, because that's a really tough sort of thing to get into too. It's like, as a writer, we face a lot of rejection, especially when you're submitting your work all the time. But man, stand-up, you get that rejection all the time if you're not.
Yeah. I'm not afraid to fail. That's it. I don't
good.
mind. I don't mind. I've been failing my whole life. I've been failing up.
Me too.
That is my advice to everyone. Fail up.
Yeah, that's sort of been, myself too, right?
I mean, it's so like doing stand-up in LA, you have to like become a door person, bus tables. You really just got to keep working up and just like suffering. And I did that for 4 years in Tucson, and publishing was there you go. That one's for free. Fail up. Yeah, so I didn't want to do that again. And publishing was paying me, and I'm okay with stringing words together.
Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
David.
Hey, David.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering, how do you get publishers interested in your story?
Okay. What is there a story you're trying to
For
publish?
instance, like, well, I'm on children's. I have children's books.
Oh, wow.
So that's they're self-published. But how do you get publishers or interested in your story? Do you send them a copy of what you've got, or just an outline, or what?
So in comics, it's a lot less formal
Thank you.
than children. Yeah, nice to meet you. Thank you for your question. Comics is a little less formal. It's about who you know and like editors and publishers. But with like traditional children's books and other like you need an agent. So I would suggest getting an agent, getting representation that could talk to those editors at Scholastic or those publishers. So if you haven't already, I would start a Twitter and start there's something called
The pitch one?
yeah, there's pitch, there's like manuscript Twitter menu.
Pitman?
Oh, it's called here, I'm gonna post it on this chat. It's called Manuscript Wishlist. And there is a website and Twitter of agents and editors looking for stories. And you
Okay.
can
Oh, cool.
And where is that?
I just posted it in the comments, and there's
okay.
also the Twitter. I suggest
Okay.
everybody getting on Twitter, getting on Goodreads. But there are just editors saying, "Hey, I'm looking for a story about a Mexican who's has a hunchback and drives a magical bus." And they will put hashtag MSWL.
Oh, MSWL. What does that stand for?
A manuscript wish list.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the name. Okay.
And then you will see all the agents and all the people.
Okay. Thank you for that website.
Sure. There's other, if you click that hashtag, there are probably more relevant. Oh, here we go. Am querying. Here's another hashtag to look for. Yeah.
Okay.
So those of us who are really old, Henry, what does one do with a hashtag querying, and where do you put it? To
Okay,
find
so if
information?
you go here, I'm going to share my screen. Can I do that?
Yes.
Yeah, here we go. Can you see this here? Okay, so if you go to Twitter, there's a search bar and you put in the hashtag manuscript wish list, this hashtag in, and you hit search, and you will see the top tweets, and you will see the latest tweets, and you'll see people. I'm not open to book submissions, but we'll make an exception to this. People, just agents here.
Cool.
You just see, like, here we go. We got Jeffrey, got an author here. We got Alice, who is the founder and literary agent of this children's and YA agency representing award-winning agency.
Cool.
So you follow her, and then you hit this little thing here, or you hit tweet, and you can send a tweet at her. Say hello. Yeah, so this
What
is a
if
good
hello
way.
causes a lot of stress? No, I'm just kidding.
That is a different Zoom call that I charge more money for, Cynthia. But yeah, there is a lot of stress and anxiety of trying to get your work out there and get noticed. Here we go. You got more agents here.
So I actually have to look at my Twitter account.
This is the harsh reality of publishing and writing. It never ends. Yeah, this is how you find manuscript hashtag. Boom. You got all these people. You got, what was the other one? Writing community. Get to meet more people that are trying to do what you're doing. You
Cool.
can talk to them. Maybe they won't respond, but that's okay because you don't need them because there's so many more people.
Because you're gonna fail up.
Fail up, constantly failing up. And if you're on Twitter, please follow me. I'll follow you back. Instagram. Trying to deactivate my Facebook page. I've uninstalled it from my phone and I'm only doing it on my desktop. So not as active anymore on Facebook, but Twitter and Instagram, you can reach me there.
Why are you getting
Because
rid
I'm
of
not
it?
meeting agents on Facebook and I'm not meeting people I need to meet. And my engagement is dwindling because I can't pay for it for some reason.
Okay.
Well, thank you for explaining the Twitter thing.
Oh, of course. I'm glad to help. You know, I don't, you know, that's how I learned all these things. And these are, you know, it's important, you know, because you're going to be spinning your wheels for so long and it gets really frustrating.
There's Anka.
We can't hear you, Anka. You're muted. Still muted.
If I may jump in here, for those who don't spend much time on Twitter, there are a number of events like PitMad and Faith Pitch and others that occur on Twitter, where within a given day, you can pitch specific works based on the parameters of the event. And if you go to the PitMad website, it outlines all the details and gives a lot of information about genres and so on and so forth. And it helps it's helped me narrow down potential agents. So search those things out as well.
Thank you, Bill. Does anyone else have any questions for Henry? Questions or comments? All right. Henry, if you can stick around, because I do want to talk to you a little bit. I mean, get like some information from you real quick before we part.
Sure.
I do want to thank you for coming out and speaking to our group.
Yes. Thank
Really
you for letting me waste your morning.
I really appreciate it. I don't think it was a waste. And I really enjoyed reading about your great grandfather.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Again, thank you, everyone. Good luck.
Yeah.
I can't wait to read your story.